My husband planned to kidnap our kids and flee the country to his ex. He almost succeeded until I found secret forum posts. Last Monday turned my world upside down. I walked into the living room and noticed Marcus's laptop still open. One tab caught my eye, a weird-looking forum post. But what stopped me cold was the username. It was his old gamer tag, one I hadn't heard in years. Marcus has always insisted social media wasn't his thing, so I already felt something was off. Then I started reading. The title alone sent a chill through me, leaving my disgusting wife. At first, I told myself it had to be a coincidence. Maybe someone else was using his name. But the deeper I went into his post history, the harder it hit me. Entry after entry, going back 2 whole years. He was laying out a plan, step by step, to vanish and take our 2 kids with him. Logan, who's 8, and Chloe, just 5. This wasn't some fantasy. He was dead serious. He had everything lined up, dates, a destination, Belgrade. And it wasn't vague. Every detail was mapped out. He'd already enrolled the kids in a school over there, claimed I was abusive to speed up getting emergency travel papers, and was working with someone he'd recently reconnected with. She'd moved to Serbia a year ago to help him prepare. One of his posts even mentioned how they'd been teaching Chloe Serbian ahead of time to help her adjust. And the timing? He planned to leave while I'd be away at my sister Rachel's wedding, where I was supposed to be the maid of honor. I read how he had already shipped over toys, marked as business shipments, booked an apartment in Belgrade, and quietly moved most of our savings into offshore accounts. The comments under those posts made my stomach turn, total strangers cheering him on, warning him about custody issues. One specific user stood out, encouraging every single move. I took over 200 screenshots and emailed them all to myself for safekeeping. That same night, Marcus came home like nothing had happened. He kissed me, helped Chloe with her homework, and even suggested we watch a movie together, as if he wasn't actively planning to wipe me out of our children's lives. The next morning, I called in sick and tore through the house. I eventually found a locked metal box tucked behind his golf clubs in the office closet. The key was taped underneath his desk. Inside were Serbian language books, the kids' birth certificates, a folder labeled Belgrade property, and photos of the apartment he had picked out. There was also a notebook filled with contacts, dates, and travel plans. His target departure date? June 19th, right in the middle of Rachel's wedding. I immediately called Linda at our bank. She couldn't give me details, but when I asked about any major transfers, she went quiet. That told me everything I needed to know. Our joint savings account had been nearly drained. Just enough money left to avoid suspicion unless I was looking closely. So for the next several days, I pretended everything was fine. I talked about the wedding, helped him pack for what I now knew was a practice run. He told the kids they were headed to summer camp, but in reality, it was a test. Marcus was rehearsing traveling alone with the kids, just to make sure he could pull it off. I found emails from the Serbian school principal, congratulating him and calling him a brave single dad. The woman who was helping him, she already had housing ready, was learning Serbian herself, and was preparing to step in as the new mom to my children. Even though Marcus had tried to delete most of his messages, he wasn't nearly as careful as he thought. I found a second email account with more messages, names, payments, and timelines all laid out. That week, I reached out to 3 different attorneys. 2 of them brushed me off, saying international custody battles were complicated. But the third, Gregory, looked at the evidence and jumped into action. He got in touch with a colleague who specialized in parental abduction, filed emergency motions in court, and had alerts placed on Marcus's and the kids' passports. He also told me to act fast and move whatever money was left before Marcus could. I opened a new account and transferred the remaining $33,420. Then came the hardest part, pretending. Marcus kept talking about our family vacation after the wedding. All the while, he was secretly packing Chloe's new life into a suitcase and still telling me how much he loved me. Chloe came to show me a bracelet Marcus had given her. It was engraved in both Cyrillic and English. She smiled so brightly and said, "It's for our special trip." I smiled back, even though I felt like I was falling apart inside. We managed to file for an emergency custody order, and Gregory told me to keep acting like nothing was wrong. We needed Marcus to try and fail so there wouldn't be any gray area legally, so while he was at work, I kept digging. I found a Serbian phone number he'd been calling almost every day for a year. Our phone records matched perfectly with major planning dates, clusters of texts whenever he hit key milestones. The woman helping him? He'd been paying her for years. I found her initial, just an S, on notes, along with payment records, school plans, and rental information. She was deep in this scheme. Meanwhile, Marcus had been training our kids in Serbian, calling it a fun language game. When he took them to get passport photos, I smiled and went along with it. Then I texted Gregory right after. We had to stay ahead of him without tipping him off. Eventually, I brought Rachel in on what was happening. She was livid, not because of her wedding, but because her niece and nephew were nearly stolen. We kept her updated but didn't change a thing that might raise Marcus's suspicions. Soon after, Gregory got the emergency custody order approved and the passport alerts officially active. Then I found Marcus's hidden prepaid phone. The messages, once translated from Serbian, confirmed every single fear I had. He talked openly about getting rid of any trace of me, said I was just an obstacle in his way. The two of them had mapped everything out: arrival times, temporary housing, the works. 2 days before he planned to leave, Marcus started acting differently. Out of nowhere, he suggested a last-minute trip to the park with the kids. I told him I was coming with them. He didn't like it, but he didn't argue. At the park, I watched him snap photos of the kids and sneakily text someone. Then he wandered off to make a quiet phone call. What he didn't know was that undercover officers were already tracking him. That night, he started packing for the wedding. But it wasn't just for a weekend. He packed enough clothes to last for months. I took photos of everything and sent them straight to Gregory. Then I noticed flight searches on our shared tablet. New routes, through Vienna, Zagreb, even Budapest. He was covering his tracks, making backup plans. I barely got any sleep that night. Around 3 a.m., I heard him talking on his burner phone. By 5 a.m., he was fully dressed and gently waking up the kids. We weren't supposed to leave until 4 in the afternoon. I sent Gregory a message. It's happening. I stayed in bed, pretending to sleep, while Marcus tiptoed around like a burglar in his own house. I heard him whispering to the kids about a surprise trip. Then Chloe asked, half asleep, why they were leaving so early. That nearly broke me. I got up slowly and found them all in Logan's room. The kids were dressed, and Marcus had passports sticking out of his jacket pocket. I asked him what was going on. He froze, then he started throwing out lies, said he was just trying to get a head start on packing, claimed he was taking the kids out for breakfast, said it was a surprise for the wedding, and then Logan, bless him, said, "We're going to see Daddy's friend on an airplane." The look on Marcus's face said it all, like he'd just been punched. I asked why they needed suitcases just for breakfast. He got frantic, tried to move past me with the kids. That's when I pulled out my phone. I told him I'd recorded everything we'd said. I said the police were already waiting at the airport, that his passport had been flagged. I told him I knew all about Serbia, the forum posts, the fake abuse claims, everything. His expression shifted into something terrifying. First anger, then panic, and finally this cold, robotic focus. He lunged at me, trying to grab my phone. I stepped back and warned him. One wrong move and he'd be arrested right in front of our kids. He stopped, then told the kids to go back to their room and turned to me, crying. Said it was just supposed to be a surprise trip. Said the Serbian woman was only a friend. Tried to pass off the forum posts as some kind of fiction project. Creative writing, he called it. And for a split second, he was so convincing, I almost second-guessed myself. But I knew better. I reminded him about the money transfers, the apartment lease, the school forms. This wasn't a story. This was real. I told him he had a choice: walk away quietly or get arrested right here, right now. He spat at me. "You ruined everything. They'd be better off without you." Then he grabbed his keys and stormed out the door. I texted Gregory right away. Marcus drove past our nearest airport and disappeared. I packed a few bags, grabbed the kids, and took them to my sister's place. I told them it was a surprise sleepover. They were puzzled, but excited. Meanwhile, I was barely holding it together. Logan kept asking where his dad went. And how do you explain to an 8-year-old that his own father just tried to kidnap him? Around noon, Gregory called with an update. Marcus had ditched his car at a train station and caught a ride to a nearby city with a smaller airport. Serbia was just a distraction. He had a backup plan. From there, he was flying to Canada. And from Canada, he could have gone almost anywhere. By 4:15 p.m., police found him at his departure gate. He was alone, no kids. When officers approached, he tried to bolt. Then he changed his story, said it was all just a mix-up. But with a one-way ticket, a packed suitcase, and everything we had on record, nobody believed him. He was arrested right there in the terminal. The days that followed were chaos. I gave a full statement to the police, had long strategy calls with Gregory, and somehow I had to keep things normal for the kids. We went back home. That night, Marcus called from jail. I answered, just to get the recording. First he begged, then he switched to threats, said he'd fight for full custody, called me unstable, promised to ruin my life. I told him straight, "Everything you just said is going to the prosecutor," and hung up the phone. Telling Logan and Chloe the truth was the most painful thing I've ever done. I explained that Daddy had made a really bad choice. Chloe cried herself to sleep for weeks. Logan just shut down, stopped talking. I got them both into therapy. Our first court date felt like something out of a dream. Marcus wouldn't even look at me. His lawyer asked for bail, but the judge literally laughed. "Flight risk?" he said. "Obviously." Marcus's parents showed up from out of town. They were cold, confused. Marcus had told them I was abusive. I showed them the screenshots right there in the hallway. 2 years worth of lies. I watched it all come undone in their hands. They broke down in tears. And then we found the final puzzle piece. His Serbian contact was actually his ex from college. They'd gotten back together behind my back. She'd moved to Serbia 2 years ago for work. Turns out they'd planned all of this together. She'd enrolled my children in school, furnished an apartment, and even practiced Serbian phrases so she could pretend to be their new mom. 4 weeks later, Gregory called with news. Marcus wanted to make a deal. The evidence was crushing. He pled guilty to attempted international parental kidnapping, fraud, and lying to federal agents. In exchange for dropping a few lesser charges, he gave up all parental rights, agreed to return the money he'd transferred overseas, and accepted a minimum 6-year federal prison sentence. I accepted the deal, not for him, for my children. The best part? My kids wouldn't have to take the stand. It was finally over. As for his ex, she was immediately added to an international watch list. There's still some legal cleanup happening behind the scenes, but one thing's for sure, she's never getting anywhere near my family again. The day Marcus stood in front of the judge and confessed to everything, I barely recognized the man in front of me. When they asked if he understood that he was giving up all parental rights, he just gave a silent nod. No emotion, no final words, just a man watching the fantasy world he'd built on lies completely fall apart. Afterward, Gregory walked me through what would happen next. Marcus would be transferred to federal prison. The paperwork finalizing his parental termination was in motion. And our divorce? It would go through without a single fight. I'd get full custody. No more joint decisions. No more backdoor legal games he could pull. That night, once the kids were finally asleep, I sat out on the porch with a glass of wine. And for the first time, I let the full weight of everything hit me. I didn't cry for Marcus. I cried for the lie I'd been living, for the family I thought I had. I cried because he'd been willing to drag our children through hell just to get back at me. That kind of betrayal, it leaves wounds that don't just disappear. It's been 3 months now. Marcus is serving time in a federal prison 4 states away. No letters, no calls, just silence. The divorce was finalized last week. The judge granted me full custody, but let's be real. That was already decided the moment Marcus gave up his rights. Next month, the kids and I are moving into a new place, a real fresh start. I've listed the old house. It's filled with too many memories, too many secrets hidden in closets and compartments. Rachel finally got married last month. It was a little later than planned, but still beautiful. Watching her say, "I do," hit me harder than I expected. It felt bittersweet. Because I once stood in that same spot, thinking I'd found forever too. I'm in therapy now, trying to piece together how I missed the signs for so long, how I lived with someone who was plotting to erase me for 2 years, and I had no idea. Some mornings I still wake up angry. Other days I just feel lucky I caught that forum post in time. But the what-ifs, they haunt me. What if I hadn't borrowed his laptop that day? What if I hadn't clicked that tab? What if Marcus had pulled it off? I could have come back from my sister's wedding to a quiet, empty house. I might have never seen my children again. But that didn't happen. He failed. My kids are safe. They're home, sleeping just down the hall. Marcus is locked away where he can't hurt us anymore. His ex can't come near us. Most of the money he tried to hide is being recovered, little by little. It's not completely over. But the worst part? That's behind us now. To everyone who commented, messaged, or simply rooted for me, thank you. Your support kept me going. I was this close to losing everything because I trusted the wrong person. Never again. Please trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Ask the uncomfortable questions. Don't wait. Protect your peace. That's what I did, and it saved my children's lives.